Top story this week. All the women independent, throw your hands up at me. Ladies roundup. Andy, what a week for the ladies it's been, or pour la femme, as you might say, if you were trying to explain what makeup was to a French speaker before explaining that it was actually, interestingly, also pour la homme in many situations as well. Now, first, some good lady news. Ladies are still very much the democratic majority on Earth. 51%, Andy. They've got us numerically outnumbered. That's a math fact. Sadly, not all the other lady news is quite as good as that. Egypt lady news now! And Egypt is a country in transition, but they're going to have to decide what kind of country that they want to transist into, especially lady-wise. Do they want to be lady-friendly? Or not lady-friendly, Andy? Egypt is a country with a general attitude to the equality of the sexes, only slightly less ancient than their pointy buildings. In Egypt, only men are accepted as natural-born leaders, as they believe that only men possess the necessary talent to lead in the form of the entirely coincidental ownership of natural-born penises. And let's be clear. It's not like either Britain or the US has a particularly stellar record in political equality. America itself has still not had a female president. It's like a key part of any presidential inauguration is still, please place your hand on the Bible and your penis on the podium. Britain has only had one female prime minister, but we did have her for 11 years. Now, you might say, that doesn't seem that bad. Margaret Thatcher is so pretty and charismatic. You're thinking about Meryl Streep. You're thinking about Meryl Streep there. Now, we also had Tony Blair.
Also, in real terms, John, Margaret Thatcher was an ox. The closest America ever came was probably Calvin Coolidge on his Feminine Fridays, but those have largely faded from history now.
Now, we also had Tony Blair for 10 years, and you might think, well, how's that relevant? He's not a woman. Besides, he was so talented and seemed to be able to play whatever political part was required of him. You're thinking of Meryl Streep again. You're thinking of Meryl Streep. That's your mistake.
You're right in saying that Britain and America are not particularly good when it comes to gender equality in politics. The UK has the 49th equal highest proportion of women in the lower house of Parliament, level with Eritrea and Uzbekistan, whilst America is 71st equal. That's level with Turkmenistan and 1% ahead of North Korea. So,
holy shit! Is that true?
Yeah. So things are not going quite as well as they could have been in terms of Mrs. Pankhurst not getting increasingly stroppy in her grave. I'm not saying all women should be MPs, John. But what I am saying is that 30% of all male MPs and male representatives in whatever America calls its lower house should be randomly selected for sex change operations. I think that would also weed out those who weren't fully committed to their political beliefs rather than personal aggrandisement.
But that's not the point when it comes to Egypt. The point is that the promise of a new free Egypt post-revolution does not seem to be getting extended to women, despite the role that they played in the revolution itself. Even at the height of the protest in Tahrir Square last year, when women bravely bucked the conventions of society and turned up to join the demonstrations, some men yelled at them, "Go back home and feed your babies," to which the natural human response is, "F*** off and don't be such an arsehole." But sadly, in some societies, women aren't allowed the joys of using such elegantly crafted comebacks as those. In the new Egyptian parliament, there are only 9 women MPs out of some 508 seats. That sounds pretty bad, but it sounds even worse when you find out that under Mubarak, there was a legal quota of at least 64 women MPs, or 12% of parliament. You really don't want to be less good at something than a man who was just hounded from office and is on trial for human rights abuses. That just does not look good.
And it's true in some of the other Arab Spring states as well. Tunisia, traditionally very liberal when it came to women's rights, has elected an Islamist government, a moderate Islamist government. But a lawyer and activist in the Tunisian Association of Democratic Women, Saida Garrah, says that she has never been so worried about women's freedoms as she is now. In Libya, a senior lecturer in Middle East politics from the University of London said, "I think where the Islamic laws will eventually bite is in the rights of women. They've already declared in Libya that polygamy rules will be relaxed, and who knows where that is going to go." John, this does not sound like quite the utopian revolution that's we all got so excited about in our armchairs here in the West after trying so hard to create the conditions where, an appalling leader like Ben Ali could be overthrown by tacitly keeping him in power for 25 years so that he became so complacent and therefore unprepared for the homegrown revolution that we indirectly helped to create by not doing anything.
Oh, God, we're such long-term strategists.
I know.
We're always thinking 400 steps ahead.
Yeah, it's like chess. We're like Gary Kasparov, but more so.
But part of women's problems in Egypt seems like it might be women themselves. Last year's parliamentary election suggested that Egyptian women simply don't vote for women. So are women their own worst enemies, Andy? No, men are. Men are women's worst enemies, but women might be their second worst enemies. No, sorry, wrong again. That's alligators. Alligators are their second worst enemies, but women are their third worst enemies, Andy. That's the point.
And Gaddafi, he certainly had his flaws as a leader. He had a lot of flaws. I mean, he was the Empire State Building of leaders in a Manhattan of despotic dickwads. But
Oh, Andy, hold on. You don't just breeze over a sentence like that.
Okay.
You stop and enjoy it. You've just served up a linguistic dish of excellence there. Don't wolf it down and then take a swig of Coca-Cola.
But he was, by some standards, something of a feminist. But not by all standards.
Andy, back that up. Back that up by one standard.
Well, I mean, he had a Ukrainian nurse. He had, he used positive discrimination in choosing his bodyguards.
Okay.
I mean, he's not quite the Libyan Mrs. Pankhurst. Mm-hmm. But I mean, actually, no. I mean, he doesn't have he doesn't really have many legs to rot on currently. But well, John, this raises another issue: the fact there are only 9 women in a 508-strong Egyptian parliament. If women want equal prize money at Wimbledon, then they should have the same number of MPs in the Egyptian parliament. I can't help thinking that the Wimbledon Women's Champions only get 9 508ths of what the men's champion gets, if that's all they're going to contribute.
Well, I think you might want to run for chairman of the All England Tennis Club, Andy.
Well, technically, of course, it'd be 9 499ths if you're doing it that way. But anyway.
Okay, all right. You've made your point, Andy.
Well, so the average male smoker gets through 14 cigarettes a day. Women only smoke 13. Women should smoke more, John. Do you know that? This equality has to apply across the board. Thank you, Billie Jean King. You've opened this can of worms.
Political power in Egypt, as you mentioned, Andy, has shifted into the hands of the Islamists. The Muslim Brotherhood and the ultra-conservative Salafis control more than 70% of the seats in Parliament, and a prospect that worries women who are seeking equality on social matters such as education and divorce. The ultra-conservative Salafis have said that they're more than happy to grant women divorce, but rather than the right to divorce their husbands, the Salafis will be divorcing women from their rights instead, citing irreconcilable differences between the two. Egypt is in a real mess at the moment. It's in a high-grade pickle. Tourism has slumped. Local authorities cannot even pay for rubbish collection, and the country is currently literally festering in a pile of shit. Dumps of garbage are being left alongside the sides of roads, and in one Cairo suburb, piled up into 10-metre, 32 feet high mountains of filth. Those Egyptians, Andy, even in the worst of times, they can't help but stack things into massive pyramids.
Also, you have to think, John, I mean, I don't know a lot about sphinxes, but when they dump, they really dump.
It's good luck shoveling that out and using it as mulch. One Egyptian woman said, the problem facing women here is very grave. Politics is controlled by male muscles. And not just male muscles, Andy, but increasingly ludicrously juiced up muscles covered in a Jerseyan amount of spray tan.